Hey guys, I hope you're all doing well. Here's a video to walk you through the next logical rule called Modus Tollens. If you remember, we did Modus Ponens. That was Latin for the mood which affirms. This is the mood which denies. So the way this one works is if you have the conditional statement if P then Q, but this time instead of having P, which led us to Q for Modus Ponens, we have the negation of Q, which would allow us to conclude the negation of P. All right, so it's a little bit different than modus ponens. Kind of just depends on what you're given and what you can use to conclude something new. So this would be like if I said, if I go to the park, then I'm going to read quietly. I didn't read quietly, therefore I must not have gone to the park. Because again, if I had gone to the park, I would have read quietly. But since we are given that I didn't read quietly, we can conclude that I must not have gone to the park. So that's what modus tollens essentially allows us to conclude based on this information. So if I were to give you an example, again, the letters don't actually matter. Something like if H, then K, not K, therefore we should be able to conclude not H. And if I were to set up a formal proof for that, it would look like this. H to K would be a premise. So this is very similar to when we did modus ponens. Negation of K would also be a premise. And then in step 3, we can use steps 1 and 2 to conclude negation of H. And that would be from 1 and 2 modus tollens instead of modus ponens, which is abbreviated MT. Okay, let's do another one. Suppose I gave you A and B implies C, negation of C, and we need to prove the negation of A and B. All right, so we'll set up our proof. We've got our premises, A and B implies C. We've got negation of C. And now we should be able to conclude negation of A and B from 1 and 2 modus tollens. So the reason why I wanted to include this example is because sometimes people get confused when there's multiple terms. If you look at the rule, you're like, Mr. Miller, there's only a single letter here. How do we get these extra letters? Well, again, like if you watch the modus ponens video, you'll see I sort of treat these as their own sort of things. If this, then that, not that, therefore not this. Okay, these two pieces. You remember, I think I did this in the other video too. This is sort of like your P, and this is sort of like your Q. So if P, then Q, not Q, therefore not P, but P was really A and B. Okay, so modus tollens, just like modus ponens, it's more the structure that matters than what specific letters you're using. So try to look at it in its sort of structure as opposed to the specific letters or how many letters there are. All right, let's try, let's try one more. How about L implies M, negation of M. I'm going to give you another premise. Negation of L implies negation of, it applies just N. And we're trying to prove N. I could have left the negation there actually, but I'll just do it this way. So let's set up our proof. Got some premises here to deal with, so let's get those taken care of. We generally want to start with those. It's usually a little easier once you have all the premises listed in front of you to kind of come up with ideas. So there's another premise. And here's the last premise. All right, now this time we can't go straight to the N because I don't have a rule that would allow me to get N with what we currently have. So we have to look at what we currently have and say, all right, is there anything new I can get from what we've already got? So hopefully you noticed in steps 1 and 2 here, in premises 1 and 2, we have a nice setup for modus tollens. If L, then M, not M, therefore not L, from 1 and 2 modus tollens. And now that we have not L, we can use that in our proof. Well, we have not L implies N, and we have not L. Well, therefore, we can conclude N using 3 and 4, but this time we're going to use modus ponens. So back to our original rule. If this, then that. I have this, therefore that. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, Mr. Miller, there's a negation there. Doesn't that mean we have to use modus tollens instead? Not necessarily. It kind of depends on the positioning. This implies that. We have this, therefore that. That is literally modus ponens. All right, so hopefully that clears things up a little bit for you. Be sure and let me know if you have any questions, and I'd be happy to help. And I'll hopefully see you guys soon. Okay, see ya.